Good morning and welcome to Saturday's Early Morning Intuitive Guidance. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum here with some words of wisdom to start your day off well. And we are 2/3 of the way through our recap on taking the war out of our words, Sharon, Ellison, and maneuvers we engage in, mostly subconsciously, to defend ourselves against, good morning, Abigail, glad you are here, welcome, to defend ourselves against perceived attack by others. Perceived. Oftentimes it's not really there. Good morning, Jo Neal, welcome, glad you are here. So I had a lovely visit with my daughter and my grandbaby yesterday, and we took her for a walk in the stroller, and oh my goodness, the equipment. Good morning, Beth. Good morning, Gwen. Glad you're here. I'm sure given a week or two of practice, I'll be able to get all of this stuff hooked up, heated up, collapsed, engaged, all the things that need to happen with it. But my goodness, it was a lot of stuff. So have a safe travel to get your granddaughter. Yes. Good morning, Nancy. Welcome. Glad you're here. Good morning, Barb. Everybody, all the practical rebels rolling in. This is good. Because today we are moving on to the most active stage of the defensiveness that we've been talking about. We've been using Sharon Ellison's Taking the War Out of Our Words, the art of powerful non-defensive communication. And we've used the paradigm, the fight, flight, flee, fawn approach. No, freeze, missed freeze in there. Flee and flight are the same one, Bon. Anywho, you get the drift. We've talked about the two variations, a passive and an active, of freezing, and we've talked about the two variations, a passive and an active, of flight. Now we're going to talk about the two variations of fight. And the first one is she calls the fight approach counterattack. Counterattack. So it's when we perceive that someone has attacked us or dissed us or done us wrong, how we come back at that. And this one is the more passive of the two, so it's called justify. It's counterattack, justify, defensive personality type. So that is the one we'll be doing. Good morning, Carolyn. Glad to have you here live. Awesome. So let's do some tapping and some breath just to ground ourselves, open our minds, open our hearts, be ready to own what parts of this we engage in, and do something different. Do something different. We have nothing to lose by practicing a different response. So, tapping and a little breath. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. And welcome to those of you who are here whose names aren't rolling. Glad to have you. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Grounding through your feet and the base of your spine into Mother Earth, like you're sending down deep roots to ground you solidly. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. And for those of you who are new here joining us, if you're starting to feel a little lightheaded, what that tells you is you don't breathe deeply enough during the course of the day. Breathe in, breathe out. And what you can do about that is set a timer on your phone. Every hour on the hour. When it goes off, you take 3 nice deep breaths like we just did. To begin with, you'll spend some time feeling a little lightheaded. As you do it more and more, your body will get accustomed to breathing more deeply more often, and you'll find that it spreads. Beyond that, our 3 breaths, here and there, you'll notice yourself taking more deep breaths naturally. And that's all good. That's all good. When someone ends up in the hospital, as a nation, we're a pretty unhealthy nation. When someone ends up in the hospital, they give you that little plastic thing to breathe in. All they're trying to do there is get you practiced up on breathing deeper. So we can do that. We can do hard things. So for those of you who have the book and want to follow along, this is chapter 4, page 50. This is a little shorter chapter than yesterday. Yesterday's was long. But this is the point where we're talking about justifying a counterattack, that we're perceiving that someone has dissed us in some way, and we're passively going to address that. Didn't say appropriately, passively. So let's see what we got. The third and final category of defense is counterattack. When we counterattack, we engage in open conflict rather than surrendering or withdrawing. We know we feel attacked and we fight back. Unlike surrender and withdrawal, there is not much variety in the formats for counterattack. And we're seeing it displayed all over the place in our world right now, all over the place. So these ones may actually, you can say, oh yeah, I saw that yesterday. Oh yeah, I did that yesterday. Hopefully not. But it's easier to see this because it's all over the place right now. Again, my view is it's like the iceberg rolling over. This dark underbelly is now visible, which is good because now we can do something about it. We simply either justify our own position or attack the other person's. So the more passive one is justifying our own position. The active one, good morning, Mary. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. I see a cake. No, I see cup. There we go. Oh, my coffee. It's my coffee. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, time for new glasses. I actually took my dad in yesterday to get new glasses. Holy buckets, guys. Holy buckets. When you have someone who is hearing impaired and has cognitive difficulties, and it's not the usual person working with him, it was a trial, but we did it. We did it. So counterattack, justify. She calls this the defensive personality type. And you know these people. You'll know if you do these things. We have opportunity for change here. This is about opportunity for change. In the more passive form, counterattack, justify, we verbally defend ourselves against another's criticism or judgment. Also, I'm going to say perceived criticism and judgment, because we come into whatever the conversation is, schlepping all our baggage with us. And sometimes that person really isn't being critical and they aren't being judgmental, but we hear it because remember, we've got our perspectacles. We do the same thing auditorily. So we hear judgment where there may not be any. All right. This defense is definitely more assertive and above board than surrender, betray, or withdraw, escape, because we stand up for ourselves directly. Nonetheless, we are still only trying to only protect our own position rather than attempting aggressively to hurt the other person. But we're also not trying to understand where what they're saying is coming from. We're not listening to understand, we're listening to retort. Okay. Many of us have an automatic tendency to defend ourselves when we are accused of something. If our partner says you just don't care because we failed to do what was wanted or expected of us, we are likely to respond with, yes, I do. We frequently spend a great deal of energy justifying and explaining how much we care, often to no avail. We can try to defend anything from what we believe to how we spend money. So here's some of her little vignettes that she shares to help us see how does this play out in real life. Lisa and Sawyer often had arguments about how much Lisa spent on the groceries. Sawyer did not like to shop or cook, so Lisa often did both. She was frustrated because Sawyer liked to have wonderful meals, especially when they had friends or family over, but he didn't seem to understand what kinds of ingredients were necessary to make those meals or how much it all cost. Sawyer, who paid the bills and felt the financial pressures, accused Lisa of not being mindful of budgetary restrictions. Sawyer fell into a habit of confronting Lisa about the cost of the groceries as soon as she returned from shopping. She usually felt defensive before she even walked in the door. There's a problem. There's a cue that this isn't going to go well because she's already got her hackles up, right? And almost invariably, he would be upset about the amount. What? You spent $150? We don't need nearly that much. Now you'd be lucky if you can get away with that, right? Often Lisa would reply gently, "Honey, I was really careful. I just tried to get enough so I wouldn't have to keep running back to the store all week. I think it ends up being cheaper this way. And your folks will be here all weekend. I knew you'd want to serve nice meals. You'd want to serve nice meals. Who's cooking? Never mind, moving on. The wine for dinner really adds to the cost." Lisa was defending both her behavior and her rationale regarding her grocery purchases. Yeah, teeth haven't fit in my mouth yet today. We'll see. Okay. Sometimes, frazzled from the stress of being criticized, Lisa would go on a tirade. "I don't want to have to run to the store 10 times this week. Do you want me to feed your parents turkey neck soup? Sawyer, groceries cost a lot these days. What am I supposed to do?" Can you see how none of these interactions are designed to go well, or designed to problem solve, or designed to understand, right? So the implication, using implication, that's a technique of defensiveness. So she calls that a covert weapon, implication. We justify our behavior in this way out of a desire for self-protection, but we are still engaging in a covert form of counterattack. When Lisa countered Sawyer's position that she had spent too much, she did it only by implying that his judgment about the cost of the groceries was off base. She never said to him directly, "Your expectations about grocery expenses are totally absurd." Instead, by saying, "I had to spend this much," she implied that he was being unreasonable to expect her to spend less. Now, to come back with, "Your expectations about grocery expenses are totally absurd," that's gonna poke the bear too, isn't it? But if she were to say, "Your expectations about the expenses regarding groceries are off base. We need to have a conversation about this," or, "I invite you to come with me for one round of grocery shopping. I know you don't like going, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from here." With our children, we often use our energy defensively to justify our own requests. So Corey and Beth, Corey's mom, Beth's daughter, and they have been going around and around for 4 chapters now on Corey trying to get Beth to help out more around the house. So Corey had ongoing arguments with her daughter Beth, who resisted doing housework. Most teenagers do. Beth would tell her mom she didn't have time to do the dishes, or agree to do them and then not, or get angry and say Corey was unfair and expected too much. In response, Corey, trying to control her tone, would plead through gritted teeth, "I think I have a right to expect some help with the household chores. I can't work all day and do everything around here too. I'm not being unreasonable. I just want us to cooperate." So she's justifying, right? Sometimes Corey would express her frustration more aggressively, saying, "I don't think it's too much to ask for some help doing dishes when I work all day and buy the groceries and fix the meals." Whether her anger was suppressed or overt, Corey was putting her energy into justifying her own request for help. Sometimes, oftentimes, it has to do with how do we feel before we even make that request? How do we feel like it's going to go? If we feel like it's not going to go well, we're already in an energy that isn't going to set up a good interaction, right? Okay. When we justify our behavior, we are often not aware that we are making implications that cast blame on the other person, who then feels attacked. Even though Corey's approach was to defend herself, all Beth heard was a nagging mother. Sawyer thought Lisa was attacking him for what he believed were legitimate financial concerns. Even in cases where the person doing the defending is being emotionally abused by the other person, the defense is very likely to be felt as an attack by the abuser. For example, if a father humiliates his son about making a mistake and calls him stupid, the child being accused may quietly reply, "I am not stupid," or "I don't mean to make a mistake." In these cases, the child is still fighting back, no matter how timidly, because he is defending himself and implying that the parent is wrong. Even such timid statements of self-defense, however, as we know from increasingly frequent accounts of abuse cases, often stimulate the attacker to intensify the attack. And now a bunch of us who've been through these kinds of circumstances are going, well, what do you do then? You roll over? How do you know, take a breath. We'll get there. Countering the attack. When we justify our behavior, we put more energy into countering the other person's position than in clearly establishing our own. Jason arrived home from work late one night to be angrily greeted by his partner, Trina. So Trina says, "Where have you been? You said you'd take responsibility for dinner tonight." Jason said, "I didn't say I'd do dinner." Trina says, "Yes, you did. We talked about it yesterday." Jason says, "I only said I wouldn't mind doing dinner tonight." Can we see how this is going to go already? Yeah. Trina, "Well, you didn't let me know you had changed your mind." Jason, "I still haven't said I'm not going to. Just because I didn't come home right at 5 o'clock to make dinner doesn't mean I'm not going to do it." Whereupon Jason turned on his heel and stormed into the kitchen, slamming doors and pans in his apparent meal preparation. Makes you sigh, doesn't it? Just kind of makes you sigh. In his effort to defend himself, Jason simply shifted his defense to counter each specific accusation. He began by denying having said he would make dinner, then indicated he wouldn't mind making dinner, then implied he intended to make dinner all along. Finally, he went off to do it. Crabbily. What frustrated Jason the most was that he knew he had fully intended to make dinner and believed he was responsible about keeping commitments. He was upset that Trina didn't trust him to follow through. But the more he argued against her accusations, the less able he was to state his own position. This could have been very simple early on, where he could have said, "I'm sorry. I should have called you and let you know I was going to be a little bit late. I do fully intend to make dinner, blah, blah, blah." Own the behavior. Own your behavior that may have caused the issue. He then also, so at some point where they've both been fed, so they're not hangry, right? He could have said, "Could we talk about this? It's uncomfortable for me that you don't trust me, that I'm going to follow through on what I say I'm going to do." She then might launch into, "Well, yeah, my last partner was a jerk about this stuff, blah, blah." Then they can clean up the mess, right? At this point, they can't clean up the mess. And it's probably going to be a pretty hostile, quiet dinner, don't you think? So next one is giving the other person ammunition. And again, note the warlike language here. When we justify our reactions, we often merely supply the other person with ammunition to use against us. Maggie, a social worker in a state welfare department, had a problem dealing with her supervisor, Claudia, who accused her of being too emotional and of overreacting about a client in a difficult situation. Although this did not happen frequently, Maggie was upset at being told to be more objective and to refrain from expressing compassion for people in desperate circumstances. This is happening all over the place right now. When accused of reacting emotionally, she would sometimes vehemently reply, "I am not." She denied her own feelings and inadvertently implied that such emotion would be inappropriate. And in some circumstances, it is not inappropriate to be compassionate with people who have nothing and are struggling. Okay? At other times, she would say, "Well, maybe I am emotional, but I have a good reason to be upset about what is happening to this client," implying that feeling emotion for a client is usually inadvisable, but this case was an exception to the rule. Many of us, when accused of overreacting, issue denials or plead extenuating circumstances, or moving on to Tomorrow's accuse the other person of being uncaring, cold, hard-hearted, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Many of us, when accused of overreacting, issue denials or plead extenuating circumstances. Maggie sensed that she was betraying her own feelings when she used these defenses, but didn't know how else to respond. How many of these sections that we've gone through do you go, yeah, but what do we do instead? What do we do instead? And this book has various parts where it very much talks about what do you do instead? How do you ask an appropriate question? How do you moderate your tone? How do you all the things? So if you don't have this book, order it. It's fabulous. Let's see. Maggie would walk away infuriated, knowing that she had somehow confirmed the supervisor's accusations. Her attempts to defend herself had backfired. So, the next section is justification, a sign of weakness. When people defend themselves by using excuses to avoid responsibility, they may simply justify the status quo. Persistent tardiness, sloppy work, jealous rages, or a host of other reactions. Although we often use counterattack justify to explain legitimate reasons for our feelings and behavior, we risk being lumped into the same category with people who are making excuses for rationalizing their failure to meet obligations. It may be true that we were busy this week, that we barely had time to breathe, much less call a friend. But when we say that to defend ourselves, it still sounds like an excuse. And oftentimes, I just kind of developed this response after dealing with someone who did this kind of behavior a lot. Well, that offers explanation, but not excuse. That offers explanation, but not excuse. And again, I'm still coming back at that person, right? There's always room for growth here. Always room for growth. When we insist to our partner that we did have to spend so much on groceries, we let the other person's attack define the terms of the argument. We come across as needing to prove our point or rationalize our experience, and in the process, we lose our strength. When we defend a legitimate position, we can appear to be trying to build up a weak position. Others often interpret verbal self-defense as an indicator of guilt. By defending himself, Jason weakened what started out to be a legitimate position, one that did not involve breaking a commitment. In other words, when he started saying, well, I fully intended to cook dinner, blah, blah. Good morning, Tina. Glad you're here. Welcome. Again, it comes off as disingenuous when he did intend. Again, he could have merely apologized for not letting her know he was going to be late and then gone about making dinner. Likewise, Corey hurt rather than strengthened her position when she continued to reassert the legitimacy of her expectation that Beth help with the housework. So again, Shakespeare's line, what, protest too loudly? So just to recap this defensive personality type. In strategic war terms, welcome to the English language, counterattack justify is one of the passive defenses because we are simply trying to ward off real or perceived attack. If we frequently justify our beliefs, feelings, and actions, we may be referred to as a defensive person. But no matter how loudly we defend ourselves, we still feel backed into a corner, always having to prove ourselves or verify our own legitimacy. Ultimately, we hurt our own credibility and lose respect rather than gain it. So again, counterattack justify, many of us do this, but it isn't serving us. It isn't serving us. So tomorrow we will do the counterattack blame, which is the aggressive personality type. And you're going to go, oh yeah, I see this all over our world right now. And she actually has a section here that says there's a cultural epidemic of abusiveness. So we'll read that tomorrow. But hopefully this is helping you kind of parse out when you're responding to somebody. Are you reacting or are you responding? How's this going? Is it really working for you? For those who are using the more passive approaches and your only goal is to back off the person you're perceiving as accusing you of something, you may consider that successful. again, we want to take a look at what are the hidden costs of engaging in this kind of reaction versus response. So I hope you all have an awesome day. Those of you who are local, if you want to come visit, we're doing the rummage sale today from noon to 4, 1821 West Wisconsin Avenue in Appleton. And we'll see how this goes. We'll see if this is a small enough chunk. Usually we do 2 full days, and I think we're beyond that point at this point. So we'll see how it goes. If I look a little haggard tomorrow, you'll know why. But I did enjoy going to see my grandbaby yesterday, and she was a perky little girl, so we had a great time. And I learned a few things, like I think I can get the stroller up and down. I think I can get the car seat figured out. But that bottle warmer, I don't know. We'll see. Have an awesome Saturday. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you are capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.